And we have made it to day 13 of Scarin. And today we're talking about maybe the king of all Halloween movies is right in the title. Mm-hmm. Halloween. You want to help me out with the bum parts?
No.
And of course, today we're talking about Halloween from 1978. It was written and directed by John Carpenter. He co-wrote it with producer Deborah Hill, and it stars Donald Pleasence and Jamie Lee Curtis. In her film debut, by the way. Mm-hmm. Did you see any other recognizable actors in this movie?
No, I don't know who Donald Pleasence is. Is he
That's
Loomis?
Dr. Loomis.
Okay, so yeah, I didn't know who he was.
He also played Blofeld in one of the James Bond movies, and he's been in a bunch of like drive-in fare.
Okay.
Yeah. I think he's an English guy. Also, as far as other actors, I just had to say that I don't know anything about the actor, but I liked his name. The guy who played Laurie's father, Morgan Strode. Well, that actor's name was Peter Griffith. Which is so much like Peter Griffin, I had to put it on there. Yeah. I'm a dum-dum. The cinematography, something this movie often gets complimented for, and I don't always mention the cinematographer, but when you got a rock star cinematographer like Halloween, you do want to mention Dean Cundey by name. Dean Cundey deserves tons of credit for how well this film turned out, and he receives tons of credit. So it's not like people don't appreciate the fella. Mm-hmm. Made for a budget of between $300,000 and $325,000. It had a box office return of $70 million, which is over 20 times the return, which is pretty good when you adjust it for inflation. This was known as the most profitable independent film of all time until Blair Witch came along, I think, or maybe something before then. We had a real indie movie boom in the 90s, so who knows. And before we go any further, I guess it's time to give the spoiler warning. If you haven't seen what might be the most iconic, scary movie of all time, which is closing in on 50 years old, I don't know what to tell you other than we are going to spoil this movie. If you don't want it spoiled, you're out of luck because we're going to do it. So brace yourself or don't. I really don't care. I'm not your dad. This is a synopsis that I've had in my head for about 30 years, give or take a year or two. You want to hear it?
Sure.
A babysitter is stalked by an insane masked killer. Beautiful in its simplicity, isn't it?
It could have been a little simpler, I think.
How would you do it?
Babysitter is stalked by a masked killer. You didn't have
he's
to put
from
insane.
an insane asylum.
I know, but
that's why you got Dr. Loomis.
Masked killer. Like, you can just be... You don't have to be so detailed.
Did you pick up on what his diagnosis was, according to Dr. Loomis?
No, what was it?
Pure evil.
Oh.
That's a psychiatric diagnosis.
I guess
Pure
so.
evil.
Yeah.
Were you ever a babysitter?
Yes.
So did this bring up memories of babysitting?
Maybe a little bit. I mean, some of the things that she did with the kids, as far as like when she was doing carving the pumpkins. I mean, we always did stuff with the kids. Like I played Legos with the kids. You know, you don't just go over there and let them hang out by themselves and don't do anything with them. I actually interacted with the kids that I babysat with. So.
I would have been a babysitter who just went upstairs, went to sleep, and said, "Wake me up if the house catches on fire."
Oh, heck no. I mean, I went to sleep after they went to bed. You know, there were a couple times that I got like in trouble for falling asleep on someone's couch at 11 o'clock, like 2 hours after I took the kids to bed, because according to them, I should still be awake in case something happens. And I'm like, I was 13. Like, you know, 11 o'clock is late for a 13-year-old.
Yeah, maybe you should love your kids enough to come home earlier, lady.
Also, I thought it was crazy that like the boyfriends were coming to the house. I didn't do anything like that, but they were older babysitters
that's
too.
The whole
I mean, that's like the typical,
movie.
you know, people coming over and hanging out or whatever when you're babysitting. But then also they were across the street. Like who has someone babysit their kids on Halloween and not take them trick or treating?
That was the next thing I put on here. Is it's crazy how all the kids get ditched on Halloween.
Yeah.
And you know, you were raised a lot by a grandparent, so it's a
Mm-hmm.
different generation. But man, this was 1970. This is what boomers did.
Yeah.
They just did whatever they wanted, and the kids had to fend for themselves. That's why I
Yeah.
grew up a feral child. I mean, it's just how it was.
Well, I mean, my
Just
grandmother
how it
didn't take
was.
us out trick or treating, but she never left the house. She was at the house for the trick or treaters that came to the house. You know what I mean? So,
Yeah.
like in this movie, we never saw a trick or treater come to any of the houses. Those two houses, even though the
This
lights were all on.
this is the generation that had to have the television remind them every evening it was 10 o'clock and they might want to know where their children are.
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Yeah,
not joking.
exactly.
This is the generation that's
Yeah.
like, we are doing what we want to do, and kids are not
Yeah.
going to cramp our style.
I
And-
also noted that Halloween happened on Halloween. Kids were trick or treating, and there wasn't a designated trick or treat time.
so
You know, maybe you didn't go to a house that the lights were off. You know, like the kids were still running around.
There might be some people that don't get that reference. Do you
Yeah.
want to elaborate at all?
Yeah, it's just in the town that we live in. We have designated trick or treat times and also a designated day. Halloween doesn't fall on Halloween around here. It falls on whenever the city decides it falls on, which I think is silly. But anyway, but in this movie, everything happened on Halloween, which I think was really cool. And it was interesting also that they had their homecoming was really late. You know, they were talking about the homecoming dance was the day after.
Day after Halloween?
Yeah, on the 1st. So I'm assuming this Halloween happened on a Friday, like ours did this year.
Yeah.
But then their dance happened on the next day.
So there you go.
Yeah.
There you got it.
And I guess she didn't go to the football game because it was homecoming. You know, they were talking about the cheerleaders and all
Yeah.
that stuff. And I guess she just wasn't into. She was too smart for them. She, didn't do any of
She
that
was
stuff.
definitely the smart kid.
Yeah.
She really lays down the blueprint and the framework for what a final girl has to be. A final girl has to do all the right things and none of the wrong things. A
Right.
final girl has to make her father happy and not herself happy. And
Right.
that's what you see here with Jamie Lee Curtis.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious about your opinion on someone's skills in this movie. I want to know how you would rate Dr. Loomis's skill as a psychologist here, because I don't think he does a great job.
No, I don't think he does a great job either. I mean, the whole scene where he got out of the car, you know, he was telling the nurse, don't get out of why did he get out of the car? Was he going to call the gate? Like they all knew that the people escaped. He said, oh, it just is something that happens from time to time. And then he gets out and she's like, are you sure we should be getting out of the car?
Yeah.
And he just gets out of the car and leaves the nurse to herself to get, you know, scared and the car stolen. But then also, just the way he manipulated the police department too, like it was weird how he was able to tell the sheriff, you know, exactly what to do.
Wait
and the
till
sheriff didn't tell him what.
Wait till
you
we
know.
watch part 2. Loomis just gets even crazier. I am of the firm belief, having seen Halloween, the original Halloween, many times, and several of the sequels more than once. I'm convinced that the true villain of the Halloween franchise is Dr. Loomis.
Yeah.
First off, what kind of psychologist diagnoses a young child as pure evil? He does nothing to help Michael. He just wants, what did he say? I spent the first 13 years trying to help him, in the last 12 trying to pray he never gets out or something
Yeah,
like that.
he just sat and stared at a wall for 15 years. And I kind of feel like maybe he did some experimental something or other, or he created this evil person.
I'm
and he
wondering-
can't control it, almost like a Frankenstein.
Yeah,
thing.
I like the theory that Loomis is projecting some evil in himself onto Michael, and it's because of the poor treatment that Michael got from the one person who's supposed to help him that he turned.
Yeah.
Like Loomis, it's like a Frankenstein's monster
Yeah.
situation with Loomis being Victor Frankenstein.
But also, he says that Michael hadn't spoken in 15 years, and maybe he's afraid that the time that he opens his mouth and actually says something, he's gonna like,
He's going to talk
Tell on
about
him.
how Dr. Loomis touched him in his bathing suit area.
something like
That's
that.
what Dr. Loomis is really afraid of. You
Yeah.
can't believe a thing this man says.
No.
He's pure evil. If he says I put my pinky in his butthole, he's clearly lying.
I don't know if it's that far. I think it's just
Was that a
some
good
of-
Donald Pleasance
Yeah,
impression?
I think it's just some
Oh,
of the questionable maybe things that he did to him. I
Yeah,
don't
like
think
the
it was
pinky
necessarily that. I think it was more psychological.
Is this movie, in your opinion, the standard bearer for slasher films?
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think so. I think it sets up, you know, Freddy and Jason and all those as the original one, but also it's the one that that all of the other horror movies and slashers like after that kind of followed the same idea, um, especially as far as like the walking fast or running and then they're right behind you,
Yeah,
kind of
yeah.
catch it up type thing. And um, I don't know. Yeah, yeah, I agree. There's a lot of like different areas that I can see that they, like you said, they established the good girl, the final girl or
Yeah.
whatever, and then the killer, and everything was pretty much like watching it now. I can see where I can compare it to all the things that happened in between, but at the time,
It was interesting too because there's a lot of love for Hitchcock and Psycho,
yeah,
but they still made their own original way to do it rather than following the Psycho blueprint.
right,
So that's kind of great. And the success of this movie is part of the reason that the Psycho 2 novel is so bananas crazy.
hmm
And the Psycho 2 movie had to be made to try to right the wrongs of the novel. But that's a story for when we get around to watching
yeah,
Psycho. But for me and my hobbies, the things I enjoy, the stuff I like to talk about, I have a pretty I get hyper focused on stuff that I'm interested in. I have intense special interests sometimes. And for me, this movie comes down as being one of the most important movies ever made.
yeah,
So to me, this movie's really special and
mm,
holds a really big spot. And it was in the 90s before I was able to appreciate it. I just thought it was I thought it was the lesser of the slasher franchises because those sequels made in the 80s and early 90s weren't that great.
mm-mm.
So I thought, Friday the 13th was the king franchise, Nightmare on Elm Street came number 2, and then Halloween was third. Little did I know that Halloween is the standard bearer and everything else is an imitation of Halloween to some degree.
Yeah. hmm
Anything else to say about the cultural significance of this film before we move on? I think this movie really introduced a lot of fear into the world.
Yeah, yeah,
Now, I also believe that the early use of the Steadicam
hmm
is part of what made this movie so successful. And just earlier today, I found out they didn't use an actual Steadicam. That's a very specific patented piece of technology, which was extremely expensive to use in 1978. So I think they used something called a Panacam, which gets the same effect as a Steadicam at a less expensive price tag. Might have been the first time that particular technology had been used. Dean Cundy, I'll give all the credit for that.
hmm
But I think right on in the cold opening, we were talking about Scream with a perfect opening and a perfect closing. Well, this movie, I think, also has that because this cold opening with the young Michael Myers extended POV shots from outside the house and into the house, a bit of filmmaking genius. All the old white dudes like me that chat online about making movies. we love that
hmm
that whole thing of putting the mask on so you see through the mask's eye holes, and they literally just put the mask on the front of the camera to
Yeah.
get that shot.
It was nice, nice, like you said, like steady. It didn't shake at all.
Yeah.
Very fluid movement. Reminded me of some of the like the
Oh,
one shots like they did. I think it was Dunkirk, wasn't it?
yeah.
Where everything was just
Yep.
one movement through the whole thing.
Again, an
Um,
homage to the Alfred Hitchcock movie Rope, which
mhm.
appears to be one shot, though the film canisters weren't long enough to make that whole movie in one shot. So Hitchcock, being the genius he was, found ways to weave the reels together such that it looked like one shot.
Yeah, but then there was also some beautiful shots I thought where in the begin right after that scene is over when Jamie Lee Curtis is coming out of her house and it's up in the air and
Yeah.
then it slowly comes down to where she's at the sidewalk. I'm like,
That's pretty
that kind of
good for
technology, they have
1978.
that back then. Yeah.
Like now, I just get somebody throw a drone. Like Sutton has friends who can get that shot now, but
Right.
back then you needed a crane.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's awesome.
And whoever the sound mixer was for this was, I think, was really good as well too. So
I think a lot of that was done by committee. I think this really did have a lot of indie spirit where like the person who was the art director was also an editor. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like they're jack of all trades. Of course, the beautiful score,
yeah,
all
the
the music,
was amazing in this.
and made by
Simple.
John Carpenter.
It was so simple too, but it was very like sinister, had a sinister feel to
And John Carpenter did it himself.
Mm-hmm.
In the credits, it says music by the Bowling Green Philharmonic.
it.
He's from Bowling Green, Kentucky, and
Yeah,
that's why he says. But there is no
that's
Bowling
funny.
Green Philharmonic. He just didn't want people to know he did the music
Yeah,
himself. Just him and a synthesizer is the idea I get.
yeah, but it's so iconic too.
And it's that can-do attitude, and he made his own movie for the film, and it is probably the best horror movie music ever.
Yeah,
I don't think it can ever be surpassed. It's eerie, it's simple. I don't know how he did it. He did it by accident. He'll tell you
he probably
himself.
just hit the notes by
Yeah,
mistake and was like, I kind of like the way that sounds.
and that's why, like, that's why I like to do a lot of my own music on GarageBand. It's so much easier now
Yeah.
than it was when he did it. But it's like you never know, and you might just, it's something about that can-do attitude that I always mention. And John Carpenter's a king of that, and the way he did his own music and just accidentally stumbled into the greatest horror movie music of all time. That's why I love it when people do their own score. Like the guy in town, Sam Hodge, it makes that Redhead movie I
Yeah.
talked to you about. He does his own score.
Mm-hmm.
I'm all for that kind of stuff because I think that is a way to make the movie feel like the person who made it. I love it. Okay, so the next thing I just want to know about is if you have a favorite character from this particular movie. I mean, is Lori your favorite character, or is there somebody else that catches your attention here?
Yeah, I think Lori's probably my favorite just because, I don't know, I guess because I can relate to her too, where she was, one of the, she was a babysitter, but then she was also one of the smarter kids. She talked about how people didn't
Yeah.
give her a lot of credit because she was really smart, but she was also pretty. Like I got this weird vibe though from, was it the sheriff that she ran into on the sidewalk? And I feel like he was kind of looking at her weird, and the
Yeah.
way he
And he was her friend's dad, so that gives
Yeah.
like creepy dad vibes.
Yeah.
Which it is kind of funny that the sheriff's daughter is smoking a J while driving the car and gets pulled over by her own dad.
Yeah, I had a lot of several characters I didn't like, though. And
Yeah,
I think it
yeah.
was her two best friends or whoever they were supposed to be.
My favorite character is always going to be Dr. Loomis because of the absurdity of that character. And
Yeah.
there's so much fun for me talking about him and making fun of him and picking on him. And I love over-the-top hammy performances, which is what Donald Pleasance gives us here. So he's always going to be my favorite character, but I do not expect anyone else to say he's there. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I get it. If he's not yours, I'm not going to argue
Yeah.
with you. But I love it because he is the one character here that doesn't feel like a trope. You know what I mean? He feels like he is something that differentiates this from Black Christmas and Friday the 13th.
But some of those tropes that we have talked about previously is have you ever found yourself cheering for someone to be killed?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
'Cause
Oh,
I
that's
feel
half
like
the reason I
they've
watch
always
these
set
movies.
up people to be, the buttholes in this. And I really think the two best friends were the buttholes. Just the way they talked to her was just terrible. And she just I don't know why she put up with it.
Well, one of them is going to be my favorite kill when we get to that part, so we'll wait. Dr. Loomis's name, we were talking about Dr. Loomis in the last movie a little bit, how Loomis might be the most common name in horror movies, and I ran across a little deconstruction of it here. Can I share it with you?
Sure.
Okay, so Dr. Loomis's name is derived from the character of Sam Loomis from Psycho, who was the boyfriend of Marion Crane, the character who was portrayed by Janet Leigh, and then also further love of Psycho. That's why John Carpenter really, really insisted that Jamie Lee Curtis be the main character because she's the daughter of Janet Leigh.
Okay.
And then that name, because of the two legendary horror movies in the slasher genre are Psycho and Halloween. So when Loomis pops up in both of those, it gets homaged in every slasher made, from the 90s on. So that's why that ends up, that last name just seems to pop up again and again and again in any kind of slasher horror movie that you watch that's made. And it's because those two legendary films fed each other in a couple of different ways.
Yeah.
And, Carpenter definitely went in a direction that would make it so he's not very compared to Hitchcock now. But at the time, I guess you could see he had a lot of admiration for the guy. What did you think about the aesthetics of this movie overall? Because I think Carpenter has an artist's eye to a degree. He's a pan artist. It's not just filmmaking. It's also writing and music. He's just across it all.
Yeah.
And, you know, the way this opens up, so simple, but so effective. It's like a really talented graphic designer came up with the idea. We just got the pumpkin and the music, and it sets the mood. You run some credits, people know what they're in for.
Yeah, it was probably really cheap and easy to do it that way.
Yeah.
But I think there was also some intent, purpose in that. Like you said that the when the camera pans out and it's the left eye, the
Yeah.
left eye is usually associated with evil. You know, that's
Oculus Sinister is the
so
Latin name for the left eye.
in history, like in art, even in art history, like the left, anything dealing with the left side, because most people are right-handed, very few people are left-handed, you know, but everything left, as far as like even in language, like you said, like in Spanish.
Yes, sinister is the Latin word for left.
Yep. So left is not right, I guess. Something like that.
I mean, it's like right and wrong, right and left,
Yeah.
dexter and sinister.
Yeah.
So if you're dexterous, that's your right hand. If you're evil, sinister, that's your left hand.
Yeah, sure.
All right. Now, this movie has an interesting backstory in how it was developed.
Okay.
Initially, after seeing Precinct 13, Irwin Yablance, who was a producer, a money man for like the B movie scene, he works a lot with the guy who made Shrunken Heads back in the 80s, for
Ugh.
example.
Okay.
So Irwin Yablance watches Precinct 13, which John Carpenter had made. He thinks this is the guy I want to make a sequel to Black Christmas.
Okay.
Which Black Christmas, another one of those legends from the early days of the slasher genre.
Mm-hmm.
And the more they were talking, they decided instead of Black Christmas sequel, let's make an original movie. And that movie was going to be called The Babysitter Murders.
Oh.
And I wonder if you think this movie would have been as successful, as popular, as iconic, or as beloved if instead of being called Halloween, which I think is a perfect title, this had been called The Babysitter Murders, and it sounds kind of like an episode of Dateline or something.
Yeah, it sounds like something that'd be on a Lifetime movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think it would have been as effective. I don't think people would have wanted to see that. Really.
I think the title is a big part of what this movie is, and
Yeah.
I'm so glad it's not The Babysitter
yeah.
Murders.
I mean, I think also that title like gives away the plot when the babysitter murders. I don't like when
Yeah.
it's straightforward. I'd like it a little more
You know what?
catchy.
I agree with that. I
Yeah.
think you make a good point about that too. So I got no argument on the idea not being quite so upfront. Have a little mystery mixed in with it. What did you think of the ending of this? You know, we get the beautiful, beautiful battle between Jamie Lee Curtis and Michael Myers, and then you have Loomis come in with delivering 6 shots, which if you've seen Halloween 2, he makes sure everyone knows that he shot Michael Myers 6 times. And yet the body disappears, and then you just hear some heavy breathing as you see random scenes of Haddonfield, Illinois.
That's just the typical, you know, like we had talked in the previous thing, like
But
the
it wasn't typical in 1978.
right. I think this movie set up a lot of those things that other, like you said, the standard.
I think that's one of the
others.
hardest parts about younger folks appreciating this movie. Perhaps. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't want to throw shade. Not every young person's the same. But it's hard to appreciate the originality when you see something that's been copied so much that it itself seems cliche. But you have to remember, hey, this is why it's copied so much.
That's what Jamie Kennedy's character was trying to
Yeah.
say in the
In
Scream one that
Scream.
we talked about. Yeah, all these things that were similar.
I think this was probably a perfect ending because it got mimicked so much for a reason. And John Carpenter had zero thoughts of this launching the type of any kind of franchise at all, much less the type that's still going on 50 years later.
Yeah.
I mean, there will be a new Halloween movie in 2028 for the
Yes.
50th anniversary. I promise
Oh,
you.
absolutely.
And there's a, it won't be David Gordon Green, most likely. The guy who did the last one. That's just the rumors that I'm reading.
Mm-hmm.
But he had no idea, no dream, not even a faint glimmer of making this into a franchise, but he left that perfect open-ended franchise ending that every horror movie has now, just in case there's a lot of money to be made.
Yeah.
And once again, just like this soundtrack that he stumbled upon by accident, he stumbled upon this perfect ending for a franchise by accident.
Yeah. Well, I always like wonder too. I wanted to ask you this about this movie.
Sure.
If Jamie Lee Curtis would say that this was her best acting.
It was her first acting.
Well, I know it was her first acting, but like, would she go back and say that this was her favorite role, or would she critique herself because there are many times in this movie where she overacted, I think.
I haven't read any interviews where she specifically talks about her appraisal of her performance here,
Mhm.
but from the various interviews that I have read with her talking about other things like Scream Queens that came out quite recently and her
Mhm.
status as a Scream Queen, she seems pretty humble.
Mhm.
And I think she would say, I was just a kid doing my best.
Thankful for the
Yeah, I
opportunity.
think she
Yeah.
would say something very humble.
Yeah.
And that's just me using conjecture from what I've seen her speaking publicly in other events. But
Yeah.
I have no idea if she has any particularly strong comments out there about this.
Yeah. Well, I wonder if it was her, if she was told to be that way, or
Yeah.
if it was her character, because there were so many times that when Michael was in the house and she was in the house and she would just and I'm like, why are you still standing there? Like
I,
it's one of those silly where I'm analyzing the movements of the
okay.
characters, and like why would they have them in real life? Why would a person just be standing there and just screaming like that?
Well,
And
I'll put some of that on John Carpenter because in the research that I did, John
mhm,
Carpenter came up with like a fear scale. And
mhm,
before a scene, like before they start shooting, he kind of establishes what the fear scale is. And for a scene, he'd say, okay, Jamie, for this one, I need a 7 on the fear scale. And that's what you would do. And he'd say, I need a 3 on the fear scale. And that's what you would do. So I'm going to put
interesting.
that on him because he
Okay.
was trying to tell her what level to turn it up to. And maybe he was turning it up to a 10 when a 7 would have sufficed.
Yeah. I think I'm trying to also like it's hard for me to analyze this movie now versus 1978. What were the
Yeah,
mannerisms of the people back then? Because
definitely.
also the babysitter, when she put the kids in the closet and then she went and got in the closet, I'm like, why would you get in the closet? Why would you lock the door to the closet? And when it's shaking, all I could think about was that's not a real closet. That's almost uh, like an armoire or something. The way the
Yeah,
everything
yeah.
was shaking, and
It
then
had the
he
accordion doors. It was
right,
weird.
and then and like anybody could just break those open. Like, and she tried to lock them from the inside, and then all those wire hangers, and all I could hear it was Medea saying wire hangers. She grabbed that wire hanger, and when she was going to stab him,
In the
he
eye,
he
yeah.
punched through
That's
the
up. That's
closet. And I'm
one
like,
of
he
the
just
most iconic scenes in horror movie
right,
history.
like he just was really like slow. It was kind of very slow there, and
Uh,
like, why is she hiding? What does she think? She's not gonna die, like sitting in the corner and screaming and like being really loud,
Do you
So
remember that pocket door we had in that apartment in Nashville that was
yeah,
just on runners and it would even like swing forward and
yeah,
back? I think that would have been the only door to offer less protection than that accordion
yeah,
door because that thing you just push on and it comes off the track.
yeah. It was crazy though, that scene, and then I guess when she stabbed him, and he fell over, and then she steps over him, and then it's just like, why didn't you grab the kids and run out? I don't understand. Like, she said, open the door, kids, it's me. And then she squats down on the floor. She didn't even check him. Like, she kicked him,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
To make sure he wasn't moving or whatever. But she steps over him and she gets down on the floor and she's talking to these kids. And the kids are just sitting there like, no, there just wasn't a killer just laying supposedly dead right behind you in the
Yes.
bedroom. And then she has the kids leave, and then she's just standing there. Like, is she in shock or something? Because it's like she can't move. Why are you not getting out of the house? Why are we waiting to see something happen? And that was probably one of my favorite shots right there, because
Yeah.
all I could think about, like, she's standing in the wall, like standing beside the wall, and she's like breathing heavily, and he's still laying on the floor over in the background. And then in one swift motion, he sits right up. And all I
I
could think
love it.
about was the ab strength it took for him to not push himself up off the floor. How he just sat
Yeah.
straight up, and I said,
Perfect.
man, that's really good.
I bet there was some kind of a gimmick to that. I bet you that Nick Castle had some help. I don't think he's the
Mm.
world's greatest crunch artist.
But I feel like that was an iconic
It's great.
move
Yeah.
too, where he sits up and then he turns his head,
It
so it's
it
like there's a lot of things that
now,
happen that way in other movies. So
John Carpenter went to film school at USC.
uh-huh.
So he knows his film history very well.
Mm-hmm.
And I think a lot of that was probably inspired by some similar shots of Nosferatu coming up out of his casket in
Yeah.
the original silent film. So
I
that's
wish
just
I
my
could have
thought.
seen him get up the rest of the way because my old body tells me that he sits up, he turns his head, Jamie Lee like walks away, and then the focus is on Jamie Lee, and he puts his hands down and he
Yeah.
has to roll over and scramble to
There's
get up.
some
Like,
grunting and cracking
I
going
think
on.
that would make a really funny like skit to see. Like you see her, leaving, but then you also the camera is still watching him trying to get up off the floor because that one swift move. How does he stand up from there? Can he stand
not
up? Does he
easy.
put his hands down? Does he put his knife down and like stand up? And like, I think that would be a funny like comedy skit
We
to
gotta
see
see how
his
that
like
goes.
back cracking and his knees popping and stuff as he's getting up off the floor.
Any particular themes in this movie you want to address?
Oh, I I don't think I can't think of any themes. I really think it's just kind of telling a story about a
Well, one of the themes,
slasher person. But I mean, I guess like I have some issues, I guess, with thinking that everybody that's mentally insane is a killer, and I don't like the way that they
yeah.
went about that.
Well, this film,
Hmm.
because it is kind of the film that oftentimes gets credit for defining the slasher genre, this is the film that gets credit for the thematic idea that sex kills and psychosexual energy leads to harm. Friday the 13th ran with that, but
Okay.
the original death happens because Michael gets upset when he sees his sister having sex, and then he later kills the babysitters who have sex. And who is the final girl? Well, the virgin is the final girl.
Yeah.
So much like some of that discussion in Scream that we didn't get into, they couldn't kill her until she lost
I
her
guess
virginity.
so. But
So
Annie wasn't having sex. She was going to go get her boyfriend.
well, in order to
You
have
just
sex.
assume that that's what they were going to
Yeah.
do. But
And anyway, so that's the theme that gets
I
probably
get that's a
most,
little too deep for me.
it gets
Like,
most often acknowledged,
Yeah.
most often criticized. Deborah Hill has said that it's not intentional, that it just kind of happens there because it's a reflection of the way society felt at the time.
Yeah.
But it is the one that laid down that the whole theme that sex kills, and that really became popular just a couple years later once public perception was changed by the introduction of HIV and AIDS into the public consciousness and awareness. Then sex really became the thing that killed in horror movies because sexually active adults were very scared of sex in real life in the 80s.
Yeah.
At least that's what I think. I wasn't a sexually active adult, so I'm trying to guess what they were thinking.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite kill from this very iconic movie that I know you've seen more than once?
I don't know if it's my favorite, but the one that stands out the most is probably Annie getting killed in the car because
Yeah.
just the way it goes about, and it takes her forever to die, and she's not making any sound. Like he didn't stab her, he just chokes her, and she's just like, you know what I mean? And then like you see her head hit the window and then her eyes cross, and it was the worst like dramatic interpretation of a death that I've ever seen, I think. And I just like I laughed when I watched her die because it just wasn't like the best one.
Well, my favorite kill was the blonde-haired friend. I can't remember her name. But the
Oh.
reason it's my favorite kill,
Not Lindsay, no. Yeah.
Lindsay's little girl,
Yeah.
which the creepy boyfriend says, "Oh, then we'll rip Lindsay's
That's
clothes off."
so weird. That
That's
really like
1978.
ew.
Unfortunately,
When they said that, I was like, did he really say that? Like, oh
this
my
is
gosh.
another lack of boomer boundary.
Yeah.
I lived when I was very young. I lived through a time where people did not have a problem with a movie in which like William Hurt and an underage Brooke Shields have a relationship. Like that was
Yeah.
like people didn't even know it was wrong.
Yeah.
That's how messed up we were back then. But
Yeah.
anyway, my favorite kill is when the blonde-haired friend gets killed because Michael Myers comes in with that sheet over him like he's a ghost.
Yeah, that's funny.
And then the glasses on the outside of the sheet. And
Yeah.
that is something I just really, really like, that appearance, that scene. If you ever need a last minute idea for a Halloween costume, cut some holes in a sheet, and hopefully your dead grandparents left you some old glasses you can throw on. But I love everything about that. It's so funny. And in that scene, he doesn't kill her until she exposes her chowder buckets with that psychosexual energy gets stirred up inside Michael, and he goes and stabs her to death. But I don't really like it because of the kill. I just love that someone came up with the idea of putting the glasses on the outside of the ghost costume, and it's that easy to fool her into thinking it's her boyfriend. Something so beautiful about that.
I think my second favorite was the boyfriend
in
the house, because that one was kind of ridiculous. You know, I felt like he got stabbed, but how long is that knife that's holding him in the door? And then why is his body not sliding down the knife with the way, like just the way he was perfectly placed on there, and he didn't move.
Just wait
and
till
then
you
it
see
looked at
Halloween
his
2.
feet, and there wasn't any blood dripping. Like, why is there not any blood dripping on the floor? It was just not as realistic. But I think it that's what made it humorous to me too.
Did you have a favorite shot?
It was probably the cold opening.
That is definitely one of the two, like, really, really iconic shots here.
Because it's through the eyes of a child, but you didn't know that it was a kid, I think, at first.
Not until the camera turns around, which is clever, too. You go from being in his eyes to seeing what he looks like without the camera ever cutting.
And then I was like, oh, man,
it's like they
poor
take
kid.
the mask off of the camera, and then it just spins around. Oh, it's a beautiful shot there.
And also, the parents standing there, the kid's holding this knife, and he's just like staring at the camera or staring into the distance. And his parents are like, Michael, what did you do? And it's like they froze in time.
Yeah.
Like, well, how come they didn't grab the knife? How come they why are they just standing there looking at him, waiting for him to answer? Like, the knife obviously has blood on it.
My favorite shot, and it has been for a couple of years now, there's a shot where Jamie Lee Curtis is like standing there with the camera on her, and she's scared. And Michael Myers is in the shadow behind her, and then suddenly the camera comes up to it, and his face lights up.
Yeah.
And I took a lighting class a couple years ago, and they talked about how that was just done with a piece of cardboard over the light. And I swear I'm going to steal that if I ever make another movie. But it's kind of like, you know, it would be darker because it would be like right up on the light, so you see how you're lit up and I'm in the shadow, and then when the camera swings to him, like that. I'm so going to steal that if I ever make another movie. But I love that. Now it's time for the important stuff. What is your scare grade for Halloween? Having been a babysitter who was perhaps stalked by an insane man, what's it like?
My scare grade? I don't know. I mean, it'd have to be maybe a B, somewhere in there, B to an A. And that's only because looking at it almost 50 years later, it's hard to go back and think about what it was like the first time I watched it. Now, the first time it may have been a little bit more, and it seemed more realistic in nature too, because it didn't feel like a supernatural movie until he didn't die after those 6 gunshots.
It's not until the sequels, where it really
so then
starts
I
to
feel like, I don't know, maybe a B. I guess because it felt a little more far-fetched, and I could relate to it, but not as much. You know, being a babysitter, I never felt scared like that, I guess.
I can't give it an A+, but I am going to give it an A because it does, for me, it encapsulates fear exactly the way a slasher movie is supposed to. And you're supposed to be able to feel fear for people that you can relate to, but also for people that you can't. So I'm going to give it an A, but not an A+. But it was too scary for me when I was a kid, so I
watched it in the 80s, like later on after it had been out for a while, but like also I can't, like you said, some of the things we talked about in the 70s, like that's just the way things were. And like, those things kind of happen, like the unknown, but I think it's hard for me to give it a good scare rating based on all the things that I have seen and witnessed between then and now, as far as like technology and the things, it just seems kind of ridiculous. But yes, I get it. Back then that was like, it's groundbreaking.
What about your pumpkin rating? How many beautiful bouncing orange blossom pumpkins do you give?
Oh, I give it a 5 too. I think it's just a great, it's a great Halloween movie.
If you can't give this movie 5 pumpkins, you can't give any movie 5 pumpkins. This is the class standard. You know, like whether a movie is good or not is based on how much it's like
Yeah.
Halloween in some
I
ways.
think I
So-
did a great job picking this one as
You
the last
sure
one because I
did.
told you I wanted to do this one last.
And I got to
And
tell
I
you,
think it's
going
set up well with Scream because they're watching Halloween, you know, the next to last one.
and I think that there's a nice thematic trend there because
Yeah.
I feel like Halloween reset the slasher genre from Psycho, and then I feel like Scream reset it from Halloween, and Scream referenced Halloween just like Halloween referenced Psycho. And
Yeah,
I
yeah.
love the symmetry, and it was all accidental. We didn't do that on purpose, but
Yeah.
after watching the movies, I think it worked great.
Yeah, it
And-
really did.
And with that, one final time, first off, I want to say I've had so much fun doing this with you. Thank you so much for suggesting this and
Yeah.
keeping me on track and making me do it. And it really means a lot to me. And I just want to say thank you.
And if you keep watching, we're going to try to do something for Thanksgiving. I think we had discussed like just a week of movies because this is really hard on us right now with our
Yeah.
schedules and stuff.
And then something
Things
for
will get
Christmas.
better. But also, yeah, I think for
Yeah.
Christmas we want to do like the whole month of December.
Or 12 days. We'll talk.
We're gonna do we're gonna do the whole month, whether we like it or not.
Well, with that, I just want to ask you, please, please, please don't ever give up. Consume art, make art, do what you love what you do. And I guess there's a chance we'll see you around Thanksgiving.